Hello, so I'm gonna make a video on Auguste Comte. I can't quite say his second name. Comte. Yeah. Basically, we're doing about him in philosophy at the minute, or at least partially anyway, in relation to secularization or secularism. Secularism? I think that's the word. Yeah, so I'm just gonna talk about his ideas a little bit and explain a little bit about him. And, yeah, that's pretty much it. Uh, right, so Auguste Comte was basically the founder of sociology. So, and he was a logical positivist. So, he believed in science as being the highest truth, and he said that society and individuals go through three stages, and when the Renaissance came around, that was the age of logical positivism or scientific positivism, and that's supposedly one of the highest forms of society, and sociology is at the pinnacle of that, and that's reflective of his humanist views. So, like, religion might put faith in a god, whereas supposedly logical positivism or humanism puts faith in people, and puts people at the center. So I guess it's individualistic, but it's also altruistic. And he actually coined that term. And altruism is basically, I guess, working for the common good. And this is prevalent in John Stuart Mill's work on utilitarianism, because he also talked about altruism as being an important part of society, and he was actually influenced by Comte. So yeah. Okay, so the three stages. These were theological, metaphysical, and logical positivism. As I've just said, theological is basically it's religion. So, and it's split into three sections. This one, I believe. I don't know if I'm going to be able to remember the names of all these correctly, but I can try, and I can explain each one, I think. But it starts off with, so, theological, and this encompasses fetishism, which is basically the idea that inanimate objects have a living soul, and people used to worship perhaps trees, logs, stones, rocks, just things as if they were gods. So we would treat them as gods. Then comes along polytheism, which is where we perhaps look around and we see that the weather, and we see all these different forces of nature, so we attribute a god to each of these things. So there is multiple gods who control all of the different natural forces which are going on in the world. Yeah, so it could be like the god of the sun, the god of the moon, the god of rain, the god of thunder, yeah, and so on and so forth. And then comes monotheism, which is, I guess, the next stage of that. And monotheism is perceiving one superior being. So yeah, mono meaning one. So that is, I guess, the Abrahamic, similar to Abrahamic religions. So like Christianity, Judaism, Islam. These religions all perceive one god, whereas perhaps Hinduism is polytheistic, where it perceives multiple gods. Okay, so then we move into the metaphysical stage. So all of that is under theological. Next is the metaphysical stage, which is basically, I guess it's where we abstract ideas almost. I can't remember what else Comte said about this other than it being bullshit. Yeah, he didn't. I don't know. I can't remember what he said. I probably should have notes about it, but I don't. Okay, I just know he didn't like this stage. I know he rejected it, and perhaps he didn't see any importance in it because the only truth is the scientific truth. And I think I'll probably be able to explain the metaphysical better if I'm able to go on to the logical positivism, and perhaps explain that a little bit, and then I guess compare the two, because yeah. And I'll say why I disagree with his views on metaphysical. So Comte was a scientist, and like many scientists, like Dawkins and Freud was a psychologist, but so they're materialist. They believe that the only true reality is the material world. It's what we can see. It's what we can touch. It's what we can measure. It's that which can be, I guess, observed and measured. And and the metaphysical supposedly can't do this, or can't be measured. But does that make it any less real? And I don't think it does, because metaphysical is basically an abstract idea, or something that's abstracted. It's not, you can't hold something that's metaphysical. You can't touch it, but it's there. And this is undeniable. It's not something that's mystical. There's actually a basis for this in reality, and it's an important one. It's significant. And because ideas are abstract, emotions are abstract, what else is abstract? I guess sentiment. Like, if you have an object, you're not just experiencing the object, you're experiencing your subjective perspective of the object. It's like we can't help but put a filter on the world that we're seeing. We're never just experiencing the material world, we're experiencing the material world plus ourselves, and that subjective filter matters, because that's part of the experience. And it seems like the scientists just want to completely reject that and just look at the world as it is. Like, okay, you could say this is a pen, but it doesn't tell you anything about the meaning of the pen, or the meaning the pen might have to you. Like, this is my favourite pen. I've drawn some of my favourite drawings with this pen. I actually have some of them over there. So I've created artwork with that pen, and it was an expensive pen as well. And like, science might tell me what the pen was made of, and it might tell me the process of which it's had to go through to be able to come to being the pen that I now have today. But it's not going to tell me about the sentimental value that the pen has to me. And it's not just for pens, because this is probably quite a trivial thing and it really doesn't mean that much to me. But let's assume that you get a piece of jewellery off a relative, that relative dies, that piece of jewellery it's not just a piece of jewellery, is it? It's got a lot of sentiment to it, it's got meaning. But the thing is that the object itself doesn't have meaning. You impose meaning on it. You're experiencing your perception of what the object is, and you're imposing that onto the object and associating it with the object, but the object doesn't actually have value at all. Debatably. I don't know, it's hard to explain, but basically what I'm trying to say is that there is truth in metaphysical reality. It's not just something mystical, it's something we experience on a daily basis, and we're unable to escape from it. And it's all well and good saying that we can, science is the way to go, we can just look at the world through a scientific, logical, rational eye, but you're denying a part of experience, and that's important. Science can only take us so far, and it's like, why would we assume that everything is just material, and everything that we can do in the world and experience in the world can be explained through the means of science? Because I doubt that it can be. And let's assume that it can be. Let's assume that we can explain emotions and subjectivity through certain neural pathways in our brains lighting up when a certain event happens, but that's just telling us what's happening. It's still not explaining the experience. We don't understand consciousness at all. It's like we've gone through so many scientific developments since the Renaissance started, like 400 years ago, but yet we still barely know anything about consciousness. It's a complex thing. It's probably one of the most complex things in this universe. And to just pin it down to something material or something tangible, that seems extremely reductionist. And that's a big criticism of Comte. Yeah, so that was a little bit ranty at the end, but